Hello, I'm Kathleen Benoit, host of Living Well in Montana, a program by LIFTT, which is the acronym for Living Independently Today and Tomorrow, working with disabled Montanans in an 18-county area of southeastern Montana. LIFTT is located and headquartered in Billings. It is a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing services to people with disabilities. Today with me, I have two employees from LIFTT, Jed Barton, who is in charge of outreach and government affairs, and Larry Ketchem, who is the I&R specialist. Today's topic is all about disability sensitivity, and we are going to be talking about that for the bulk of the half hour, but I'd like you two to describe a little bit of your work at LIFTT. Jed, just some of the responsibilities you have.
Thank you, Kathleen. As the Outreach and Government Affairs Coordinator at LIFTT, I handle a lot of our public relations. I write press releases, I write Facebook posts, and I help with the newsletter. I maintain contact with the public, and in government affairs, a lot of it centers with working with advocates through the Montana Association for Centers for Independent Living, as well as the other three centers for independent living in Montana to advance both legislation and executive policy.
I know you are very busy because I got an email from you yesterday saying I'm on hold online forever. We're during some meetings with the senators.
Yep.
And that's, I appreciate that, for the work that you do on both those sides. So, Larry, talk about what you do at LIFTT.
Okay. I am what's called an information referral specialist. I'm kind of a frontline person. I answer the phone calls, and when you call and ask, what do we do? Am I eligible? Can you help with this item or that item? And I take some information, and then I pass it on to the person that actually works with the person with the disability. I also sit on some statewide committees, and I wear lots of other hats. I'm just newly starting at LIFTT, so they haven't given me all my duties yet, but they have a lot lined up in the future for me.
Wow. That's a lot on both of your plates, it sounds like, but it's for a good cause, because Larry, you're on the front line of phone calls of people that are looking for help, or is that right?
Yes. They call and say, hey, I might need a ramp. Can you help? And I take down some basic info, name, address, so forth, and then I pass it on to the person who assigns them to an actual IL specialist.
Thank you both, and I'm so happy you're here today. I am excited about this topic. I think it'll be informative and enlightening. But before we go into that, Jed, I want you to speak a little bit about the Americans with Disability Act and how far it's come since 31 years ago.
Right. Yes, as you alluded to, the Americans with Disabilities Act was initially passed and signed into law by President George H.W. Bush in July of 1990, which will coming up on 31 years. And the ADA and its subsequent amendments in court interpretation, such as the Olmstead v. LC decision in 1999, are really foundational for the concept of disability rights. It's the first time in the history of the world that a nation went on record as saying that people with disabilities should be equal under the law, have access to all of the public services and public accommodations that everybody else does. Now, to transition into the topic for today, Lyndon Johnson was famous for saying, the law is one thing, but you've got to go out there and win people's hearts and minds as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we get into this idea of disability sensitivity or disability etiquette. The law cannot necessarily reach down into everyone's day-to-day interactions. And so
That's a good point, Jed. It's a very good point. I think the ADA did pave the way for us sitting here talking about sensitivity actions, that there are people who are well-meaning but awkward when they encounter a person with a disability, and they don't have to feel awkward, but there are a lot of suggestions and protocol to keep people comfortable. The ADA was there when I guess some of the concrete ADA things. Can you talk about wheelchairs, like the visible ones?
the obvious, the traditional idea of disability is the person in the wheelchair. It's even the internationally recognized.
It's the icon.
Symbol
Yes.
of disability is the symbol we see on disability parking spaces. In recent years, there's been a movement to an updated version, a more active wheelchair user. Again, as signs get, but again, disability covers so much more visible and invisible, and I think Larry can.
I was just going to
speak
ask
to
him,
that.
because the visible could be everything from wheelchairs to a service pet. I mean, it's all kinds of visible, but there are also invisible disabilities that need to be addressed.
And that's one thing that causes a lot of problems with the community, because they see someone that may have a disabled parking sticker and they hop out of their car and walk into the store, and it makes the public scratch their head and say, hey, why do they have a parking sticker for a spot like that? There's nothing wrong with them. But you never know. There are so many hidden disabilities, especially nowadays with mental health, PTSD, a lot of the veterans, and also the frontline workers from the pandemic. And you never know. So you can't make that decision by just looking at someone, because you never know, what is actually wrong inside with that person. With someone like myself, using a walker or a white cane for a visually impaired person, right away, hey, there's a disability. Mm-hmm. But with someone that has mental health or PTSD, you can't see that until you get to know them. And that makes things hard and really makes it tough for the rest of society to know how to deal with them. So back to kind of the sensitivity thing, you need to treat everyone as normal until you find out that there might be a disability, and then find out how they would like to be handled, and deal it with dignity and respect, and ask them if it looks like they're having help. Make sure you ask first if there's something you can do, and if not, then go on. If so, do as they ask. That's a big thing, and that's the main thing for sensitivity is, look at the person and think, how would I want to be helped?
Excellent. And I'm going to interrupt you because you are right in line with a short film about disability sensitivity that we're going to play and come back after the film.
Good morning, Bob.
Morning there, big man. Morning, Alice!
There's no need to be awkward. Poor Bob. Like so many of us, he just doesn't know how to interact with people with disabilities.
It's pretty easy, really. People with disabilities are people first.
We need the same things that every person needs, like respect.
Good morning, everyone.
Attention! Okay. Maybe we need to be more specific.
The easiest way to show respect is to focus on the person, not the disability. It's okay. You'll get the hang of it.
One easy way to focus on the person is to watch the person signing and not their interpreter.
Or their companion.
It's really cool that you'd like to help, but do us both a favor and please ask me first. What you think might be helping?
I got you.
Wait, ah! Oh no, might actually not.
If you'd like to offer me help, let me hold on to your elbow. Don't take mine.
Hey, would you like to take my arm?
Sure.
Assistive devices help us to live our lives. They're really important and really personal.
Grabbing them only makes it weird for everyone.
What?
Please only touch our devices and service animals if we've given you permission. And don't take it personally if I ask you not to. Remember that my service animal helps me all the time. Neither of us would like it if we were separated.
Remember, we make our own decisions. We sign documents, vote, volunteer, work, and pay taxes.
We get married.
So don't underestimate me just because I have a great smile.
Just because I'm blind
May I help you?
does not mean I'm deaf.
No, I think he said he was gonna come. Just because I'm deaf doesn't mean I'm blind.
And just because I use a wheelchair doesn't mean that I can't sweep you off your feet.
So take a deep breath. Relax. We don't bite.
Unless we're really hungry.
Hello there, ladies. How are you?
Hello. And if you're not sure what to do, just ask.
Hi. Would you still like to see a menu?
No thanks, but can you please read it to me?
Sure, definitely.
Just treat us the way you would want to be treated, and we'll all be okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Alice.
Morning.
Awkward no more. Nice job, Bob. Go forth and be human. There's no need to be awkward.
If you're just joining us, I'm Kathleen Benoit, host of Living Well in Montana. It's a program of the LIFTT nonprofit. LIFTT is an acronym for Living Independently for Today and Tomorrow. And we're talking today about etiquette and disability. With me are the LIFTT employees, Jed Barton and Larry Ketchem. And you know, I'm hearing from the video we saw on how there are ways people can show respect and not label a person as a disabled person, but more a person who is in government affairs, a person who is in intake. I mean, and there are a lot of different ways people can understand and get comfortable communicating with disabled people. You know, and I I know that LIFTT is committed to not only serving disabled Montanans throughout southeastern Montana, but also a majority of the LIFTT employees are disabled. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you know, can I ask, are you a part of that, Jed?
Yes, I have cerebral palsy and what used to be called Asperger's syndrome and is now often high functioning autism spectrum disorder, I believe. I've never been very good with that label.
On the spectrum?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I have unique challenges. If it wasn't a 30-degree day in February when we were taping, I might have shorts on and you could see my leg braces. Then all of the all of the stuff that goes along with
Yes.
being on the spectrum.
Yes, like Larry was talking about, people can't necessarily see that disability.
Exactly.
And Larry?
Yes, I have a visual disability. I was born with a disease called retinitis pigmentosa, and I went legally blind when I was 16, and now I'm pretty much totally blind. I'm one of the ones that if you look at me and don't know me, you would think that I do not have a disability until I get up and start walking around or whatever, and then you would see my disabilities or come into my work site and see my assistive technology that I have to use to do my job.
You know, have either of you experienced a well-meaning but misguided person who's trying to engage you or trying to help you out with your disability? Has that happened to either one of you? Where someone is very awkward and they're trying to be good, but...
Yes, I had that a lot out in the community when I would be using my cane and come up to an intersection and, you know, not be fast enough to cross it, but people would think that I didn't know how to cross it, and they would come up and just take my elbow and say, "I'll help you across," instead of saying, you know, "Are you okay? Do you need some assistance?"
And isn't it best if you offer and say, "Would you like?"
Yes, yes.
Instead of grabbing them.
Yes.
You know, knocking somebody down the stairs. What about you, Jed?
It's a very good question. Over the years, perhaps one of the gifts of being on the autism spectrum is that you kind of don't notice some.
That's interesting.
I hesitate to say slights, but I know there must be something out there I can think of it.
Well, you know, Jed, because I've interviewed you before, I was taken by a comment you made about going to school in Billings, and you were mainstream. You weren't in what they used to call special ed.
Right.
You were not in that. You went in the mainstream.
Right.
And
I did have an individualized education plan.
Yes, and the autism probably pillowed you a little bit from, you know, people being awkward or uncomfortable. So let's talk about that. Is it uncomfortable for someone discovering that somebody has special needs or whatever, but is it uncomfortable to say, what is your disability? Is that a rude question?
Again, unfortunately, it depends on both the intent of the person who asks it and the person who's going to be answering it. Disability disclosure in both social and professional settings is a topic that we do occasionally come across in our literature and our trainings, and there are different you know, and again, the biggest thing is there's really no set rule. In a professional setting, there are some legal guidelines about what you can ask and when you can ask it. But, you know, a lot of it has to do with the comfort of the person with a disability, I would say.
I know from the research I did before this interview is that people do feel awkward about what to say or what to do. And I started snooping around, you know, on the good old internet and discovered that the first step, as I understand it, in successfully and respectfully encountering people with disabilities is respect, and the good old golden rule, treat people the way you want to be treated. Would you think that's correct? Are those two of the important aspects, Larry?
Yes, I would say so. You know, most definitely. You know, we're really trying to push one union, one country, everything. So I would say, you know, look at that person with a disability and look at the person. Don't look at the disability. Look at who they are.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's one of the topics I read about is don't label a person by their disability. Label them by their skills and their generosity and their activities.
And I would add that the golden rule, as it is most often interpreted, and I believe it comes down from sources indigenous to most of the world's continents, in one form or another, talks about doing unto others as you would do to yourself, and that's a great place to start. However, in dealing with disability, one thing you've got to remember is that everybody with a disability is an individual. And what, you know, might work in dealing with me as a person with cerebral palsy and autism spectrum disorder might not work with the next person who has that same combination of disabilities based on a whole litany of other social and physical and socioeconomic realities. And so again, it's almost like, you know, if you mean well and you want to do well, don't hesitate to ask. The worst thing that can happen is somebody won't answer you or might inadvertently take offense. But, you know, it's like Larry's illustration with this person at the street corner. You know, you don't grab somebody on the street no matter what your intention is. You ask them, do you need help?
No, and it's like the classic deaf person where somebody's shouting at you, or somebody is blind and they're shouting at you. You know, it's things that, because of the ADA and because of organizations like LIFTT, it's becoming more mainstream to talk about these things, work it out. You know, good etiquette, good manners are always successful. And so I think there's a lot out there, a lot of information on how people, if you want to learn more, you can go online, you can check out all kinds of great videos like the one we saw earlier, that keep it light but respectful, very respectful. We just have a few more minutes, and I always like to talk, or have you talk, Jed and Larry, about some of the many services LIFTT offers, and that it's available for any person who has a disability, or if there's a person you know or a family member knows. Talk a little bit about the benefits of getting involved in LIFTT.
LIFTT, again, LIFTT is a Center for Independent Living. LIFTT provides certain core services, information and referral, which again is part of Larry's job title, is one of them. I once heard it referred to as a human Google. You know, if you don't know where to go or what to do, call LIFTT and we'll try and point you in a direction.
Larry, what are some of the programs that you would get a call on, or some of the services?
Anything from someone needing a ramp for access into their homes to personal care attendant services to be able to keep them in their homes, keep them out of institutions. Just basic ADA information, you know, can we take a service animal here or there, things like that.
If someone is watching today's program and they know of a neighbor who's dealing with disabilities, or they have a child who has a disability, talk us through how they could get involved with LIFTT.
Well, first they give us a call on our phone numbers, 406-259-5181, and or they can go on the web. It's I believe it's www.liftt.org.
Yep.
And then they would say, hey, I need this assistance, and we would make sure that they meet the criteria of having a disability, and then we would open a case and see what we could do to go to work to meet whatever goal that they need to keep them as independently as possible in the community.
And they change lives. I know that from the research and the studying I've done. It changes lives. We are just about out of time, but I want to thank you both so much for a really interesting conversation. I hope you come back. I've been speaking with Jed Barton and Larry Ketchem, both LIFTT employees. I'm Kathleen Benoit, and this is Living Well in Montana.